Three Japanese carriers, Kaga, Akagi, and Soryu, fill the frames of the pilot's sights. Bomb doors open. Sunlight flashes off fins and rivets as dark shapes fall. Air screams past canopies. The sea below is bright and cold, a glittering sheet torn by wakes and smoke. On the decks, yellow-shirt crews scatter. Hoses snake across planks slick with gasoline. A handful of seconds decides thousands of lives. The pilots feel the lift quiver as they pull through the dive, hearts thumping, engines howling, hoping the fuse runs true. A wall of heat swallows sound. Steel buckles, wood shatters. One carrier turns into a torch from bow to stern. Another groans with internal fire, swarmed by dots that are men with buckets and hoses. The third tries to swing into the wind, to clear its deck, to launch and fight back, but flames move faster than plans. Out here, victory looks like eruptions and black columns that stain the horizon. Yet the shock out on the water is only the surface of the story. Far from the blast line, a basement in Pearl Harbor hums with radios and pencils. Fans click, cigarettes burn low. Men in shirt sleeves lean over pads as a stream of numbers and fragments comes through headphones. Graphite whispers across paper. Eraser crumbs roll like grit. Someone taps a pencil, then stops, as if hearing a word inside the static. In this windowless room, the language of an enemy is being taken apart and put back together, piece by quiet piece. Listen closely. The loud part of a battle is obvious. The quiet part is what lets it happen. In that basement, patterns lock into place. Bearings and times form a rough map. The people here do not touch a trigger, but their notes bend the path of ships and squads. They do it with patience, with a kind of steady courage that leaves no ribbon to pin on a chest. Across the harbor, steel hands answer the call. Torches hiss, sparks fall like orange rain. Divers slip into dark water that tastes of oil and rust. Plates are cut, hoisted, and burned into place. Frames are shored, cables are spliced. Pumps rumble as compartments give up their leaks. These workers will not see the enemy. They will not be seen by crowds. But a patched hull and a tightened rivet line can lift a battered ship back into a fight. Without that, the sky above Midway stays empty. Spectacle versus silence. Visible heroes versus invisible helpers. The men in the air live on seconds. The people below live by hours that turn into days. One world runs hot and fast. The other runs cool and careful. Both must hold. When they meet, a trap closes. The Pacific often feels endless, but war narrows it to moments and rooms. A pilot counts down a bomb run. A listener counts up code groups. A welder counts the last inches of a bead. Each count leads here, to this minute when 3 enemy decks burn at once and the tide begins to shift. It is not luck alone. It is not force alone. It is a chain built from minds and muscles, all pulling in time. We begin at the flash, because it grabs the eye, and because it is what most of us know. But we will not stay there. We will walk down the stairs to the hum of radios, and into the glow of a yard at night. We will meet the quiet minds and the steel hands that turned fear into a plan. If the loud part is proof, the quiet part is the reason. What did they hear, and what did they build that made this minute possible? We go there, step by careful step. It is 6 months after Pearl Harbor. Japan's Kido Butai moves under a neat code name, Operation MI. 4 carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, cut white wakes across deep water. Their mission is simple in spirit and sharp in teeth: strike Midway, draw out the American carriers, and crush a weak Pacific fleet. They expect surprise. They expect a quick blow and a clean screen of escorts. They expect to write a neat chapter to close the book on the last American hope beyond Hawaii. Confidence fills the air the way exhaust does, hot and steady, trailing far behind. Midway Atoll does not look like a prize. It is a small ring in a giant ocean, two low islands, an airstrip, fuel drums, tanks and revetments, and a few guns pointing out toward the horizon. Sand stings faces. The sea flashes hard light. Birds lift and circle like paper scraps in the wind. Here, marine flyers tune engines and check belts. PBYs sit heavy on the water, long black boats with wings, ready to search wide gray miles and call back what they see. Across the water, 3 American carriers hold the line: Enterprise, Hornet, and the battered Yorktown. They are fewer, and one is scarred. Flight decks hum while repair crews still wipe oil from seams and tighten bolts. Fuel is precious. Pilots steal sleep. Every launch is a gamble with thin odds, because losing here means more than a mark on a chart. If Midway falls, the next doors swing open. Hawaii lies down the chain, the Pacific lifeline that feeds men, steel, and hope to every far pier can be cut. A base on Midway means enemy patrols step closer, convoys shrink, and islands start to feel alone. The stakes are not abstract. They are food, fuel, and the edge of a map that millions call home. Japan moves with the poise of a seasoned fighter. Their carrier groups drill until hand signals read like speech. Planes lift and land in tight order. Bombs and torpedoes slide into place. On paper, strength flows one way, from the invader to the target. That is the first trap, belief. When you expect to win, you move bold, and you leave a trail you cannot see. On the carriers, routine gives comfort. Fighters circle above in constant patrol. Crews arm bombers, then rearm them as new orders arrive. Hoses hiss. Deck crews wave flags. From the bridge, the sea looks empty and safe. Confidence tells them they are unseen and therefore untouchable. America holds with the caution of a bruised guard. The Pacific Fleet is still aching from the blow that opened the war. Yet caution is not the same as fear. Desperation clears the mind. On Midway and at sea, crews strip weight, count gallons, and rehearse launches on the minute. They check radios, plot arcs, and memorize headings. They do small things right because they cannot afford big mistakes. On Midway, hands move without talk. Nets hide revetments. Sandbags stack. Radios test on the hour, steady. Mechanics wipe grit from gun breaches. PBY crews trace long search legs on maps with grease pencils and hope for clear skies. Desperation says work now, because later may not come. 2 plans now circle the same dot on the chart. Operation MI aims to bait a counterattack and smash it. The defenders aim to make that bait the hook. It is a trap within a trap, confidence against desperation, each side sure that the other will blink first. But the ocean favors the side that sees more, moves first, and wastes less. In these next hours, sight and timing will matter more than tonnage. The map is set, 4 against 3, plus a lonely atoll with hard sand and stubborn crews. The numbers point one way. The feeling on deck points another. People who expect defeat work like their lives depend on each bolt and each note. People who expect victory risk missing the quiet signs that the board has changed. Which belief holds when the first reports crackle in and the first shadows cross the water? In early 1942, it feels like the Japanese Navy cannot be beaten. Their carriers seem faster, their pilots sharper, their torpedoes deadly and sure. Ships burn across a wide map. The memory of Pearl Harbor still tightens throats. Headlines show a tide that runs one way. Reality, though, is already shifting. America is not only building hulls and planes, it is building knowledge. Messages fill the air like invisible threads. In a quiet room, code groups become a pattern, and a pattern becomes a picture. The picture says, if you can read where they will be, you can arrive first. The expectation grows out of honest fear. Battles in Asia go badly. Convoys take losses. The battered Yorktown limps into port, patched and weary, proof that the fleet is thin. Crews drill by floodlight. Every rumor adds weight to the idea that the next blow will finish the job. The other view grows out of humble work. The U.S. listens. It chews through the naval code called JN-25, one group at a time. It logs call signs, habits, and timestamps. It looks at who talks to whom and when. Even when a word stays hidden, the shape of the traffic gives up a clue. Less romance than craft. It is a carpenter's mindset applied to radio. Measure, mark, cut. Material strength says carriers decide outcomes. Information says timing does. A larger fleet can still walk into an ambush. A smaller fleet can still win if it knows the meeting point before the other side does. That is the lever. One message can move more weight than a dozen shells. Walk through the two pictures. In the first, you see white wakes, crisp uniforms, and practiced deck crews on ships. You see veteran air groups. You see long-range strikes and torpedoes that bite true. Your stomach knots. Our side feels short of what counts. In the second, you see a wall of maps with pins and thread. You see radio logs stacked in neat piles. You see soft lamps, coffee stains, and the slow nod of someone who has stared at the same page for hours and finally sees it. You see a pencil circle the same two letters. The feeling is not drama, it is relief. Someone understands the schedule. Someone can guess the turn. Pearl Harbor is both wound and warning. It says underestimation kills. It also says surprise is a weapon you can build. The people who expected defeat let fear do the math. More carriers, plus veteran pilots, equals loss. The people who expected a chance did different math. Read the code, spot the route, and you have a window. A window is all a smaller fleet needs. The Yorktown stands for the strain. Her scars show on the deck and in the engines. She is not weakness, she is cost. Welders patch and riveters hum. The ship is proof that damage is not the same as defeat. If she can sail, she adds one more deck to the plan. If she cannot, the plan depends even more on being first. Unbeatable is a feeling, not a fact. Feelings bend when facts arrive. The facts come in dots and dashes, in bearings, in the repeat of a call at the same hour day after day. The facts also come from people who fly long arcs over empty water and send back a simple line: sighted, bearing, distance. Piece by piece, the paper map gets teeth. This is not a story that flatters ego. It praises patience and teamwork. The listener with headphones depends on the pilot with a camera. The pilot depends on the mechanic who kept the engine alive on bad fuel. The clerk depends on the ship that got through a night of rough water. Material strength meets information, and the point where they touch is where chance turns into choice. You can't stop them, lets you off the hook. You can read them, puts you on it. Reading means risk. If you act on a pattern and it is wrong, you sail blind into harm. But if you do nothing, the pattern still exists, and it belongs to the other side. Better to trust the work. Better to bet on the quiet edge you earned. So the expectation stands, loud and heavy. The reality builds, quiet and stubborn. One says size rules the sea, The other says knowledge opens a door size cannot see. Where is the next blow aimed? If the code points to a small ring of sand in a very big ocean, there is a way to be waiting there first. All it might take to be sure is one plain message sent in the clear. Inside Station HYPO at Pearl, the room is cool and close. Fans hum, radios hiss. Commander Joseph Rochefort shuffles in a bathrobe, coffee in hand, slippers soft on concrete. He looks tired in the way only a night worker does, but his eyes are bright. Pencils, ashtrays, and message pads crowd each desk. The air smells like coffee, paper, and sweat. The team knows a shape, but not a label. Japanese traffic points toward a strike, but where? The code word AF keeps appearing. They think it means Midway. They need proof. Without that, any trap is just a hope with a map. Lieutenant Commander Jasper Holmes leans across a table and lowers his voice. Don't break the code, break the assumption. Have Midway send a plain, unencrypted message that says the atoll is short of water. If the enemy repeats it in their own traffic, using AF, the picture snaps into focus. The idea is simple enough to feel risky. The best tricks often are. Rochefort listens, cup in hand. He nods once. The room wakes up a notch. Wires hum out the request. Somewhere on that thin ring of sand, a radio operator takes a breath and sends the message in the clear. No cipher, no cover, just a straightforward report. Midway is short of fresh water. Every friend and foe in range can hear it. Midway makes the lie sound true because it almost is. A low atoll sits over salt and coral, not rivers. Fresh water comes from tanks, from careful storage, from gear that breaks at the worst times. A report of shortage fits the place. It rings with the dull tone of routine trouble. Now they wait. The quiet between ideas and results feels longer than any night. People fuss with pencils. They rehearse how they will explain this if it fails. They imagine ships turning the wrong way because a hunch went bad. This is the weight of intelligence work. You never see the target, but the target can still bleed if you are wrong. Hours later, the line arrives. It is a fragment inside a larger stream, but it lands like a bell. Japanese traffic flags the phrase, AF is short of water. Heads lift. Someone repeats the words out loud, slow, to be sure ears and eyes agree. The room doesn't cheer, it exhales. AF is Midway. Now the quiet math can become a course and a time. Get it wrong, and carriers wait while Midway burns. Get it right, and timing turns into reach. The difference is hours, not miles. That is why one phrase in a cable can matter more than a squadron on deck out there. Here is the contradiction in full light. The enemy trusts coded language like armor. That trust becomes a blind spot. The Americans use plain words as bait, and the bait works because it is too obvious to doubt. Coded arrogance meets plain-spoken trap. The louder the code hums, the easier it is to echo a lie and reveal a truth. Rochefort carries the result upstairs. Admiral Chester Nimitz now has the one thing a commander cannot buy with steel: certainty about place. He can name a box on the chart and tell 3 carriers where to wait. The ambush point earns a calm, almost gentle name: Point Luck. It sits out on open water like a patient hand ready to close. This is how knowledge turns into movement. Orders ripple out. Charts gain pencil circles and tight notations. Fuel loads get set. Pilots study ranges. Ships push to reach a square on a deadline no one will see. There is no drumbeat, no speech, no banner. There is just the feeling that the guess is gone and the plan is real. Back in Hypo, the work does not stop. They watch to see if the enemy notices the tell. They test the traffic for signs of caution or change. Nothing. The line holds.
confidence shows not in a single message, but in the steady rhythm of many. The Japanese keep their schedule. The Americans now keep theirs. There is a moral line here, and people feel it. They do not wring hands about lying on the air. They weigh costs. A false report about water might save ships and men. It might save the atoll itself. In war, plain speech can be the safest disguise. A simple, legal sentence broadcast for the world becomes the key that unlocks a foe's secret door. Holmes smiles, but only for a moment. Rochefort sips cold coffee and sets the cup down. Radios keep hissing. The pressure shifts from if to when. If the message is true, enemy carriers will come within reach. If they come within reach, the trap must be tight. A plan built on cleverness is only as good as the steel that answers the call. Nimitz knows it. A position on a chart is not a weapon, it is a chance to use weapons well. The next move belongs to people with torches, wrenches, and flight decks that aren't quite ready. The open ruse has done its job. The secret plan stands. Now it needs teeth. Can battered machines and tired hands turn this proof into a blow? The clock says months. The hands say 3 days. That is the gap between book plan and blue-collar execution. Into that gap limps USS Morktown on May 27th, smoke-streaked, tired, still afloat.
Pearl Harbor meets her with cranes, hoses, and hard eyes. Engineers walk the decks and shake their heads. They tally holes, twisted frames, and scorched wiring. The textbook answer is simple and cruel. Months in a yard, a safe schedule, a new ship to carry the load. But there is no time for a textbook. The enemy is already moving. Shipyard workers listen, then look at each other. "Give us 3 days," they say, not because it is easy, but because the fight cannot wait. The answer is not a speech, it is a shift roster. Over 1,000 welders, riggers, electricians, and divers swarm the ship around the clock, turning a pier into a forge. Torches hiss, sparks fall like orange rain. Steel plates thud onto skids, then vanish into dark gaps. Divers drop over the side into oil-black water and feel their way along the hull. Inside, teams shore frames with timber, bolt by bolt. Electricians pull dead runs of cable and thread in new lines by lamplight. Pumps groan and settle. Air smells of hot steel, salt, and sweat. The ship trembles as if feeling hands on every rib. The timeline is impossible on paper. You do not fix a carrier in 3 days. You do not find miles of cable and lay them clean. You do not make a sea-damaged deck ready for planes by sunrise after sunrise. Yet stubborn craft makes its own math. Work in parallel, work without pause, work until the job is just enough, not perfect. Engineers write neat lists, the crews turn lists into triage. What must be watertight by tonight? What must hold for one more sortie? What can wait until after the fight? Perfection is a word for peacetime. Survival is a word for now. Every weld is a promise to the men who will stand on that plate when the ship heels hard to starboard. Night and day lose meaning. Floodlights burn. Coffee steams in chipped mugs. Lunch pails clang against grating. Foremen mark progress with chalk on bulkheads. Riggers swing load after load into place, while boatswains call out tight, steady beats. Divers come up shivering, then go back down because a seam still weeps. Electricians test circuits, flinch at a short, and try again. In each trade, pride meets pressure and refuses to blink. On Yorktown's deck, scuffs and scars tell the story of the last fight. People run hands over gouged planks and bent stanchions and feel the weight of names. The work here is not abstract, it is personal. It is the difference between planes finding lift and planes stalling into the sea. It is the difference between men sleeping in bunks and families waiting by silent phones. While hands burn and freeze and ache, strategy moves on a parallel track. Admiral Chester Nimitz studies the board and splits command.
Rear Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher holds overall control, the man to weigh the final call. Rear Admiral Raymond Spruance takes Task Force 16 to sea, steady and calm, eyes on timing and position. One side of the house reads the enemy, the other shapes the blow. The book says finish before you fight. The yard says fight so you can finish. Both are right in different worlds. In this world, the enemy's schedule drives the clock, and the clock drives the craft. The plan needs a deck to launch, a hull to float, and a rudder to answer. If the ship meets those tests, she goes. The hours run down, gauges creep into the green, leaks slow to a drip. A last section of cable locks into place. A frame is shored with wedges that still smell of fresh cut wood. At dawn on May 30, lines come in off the bollards. Tugs pull, the big hull stirs and points toward open water. The fix is not pretty. It is enough. This is the cost of a quiet idea. A fake message sets a trap, but men with tools make the teeth. Over 3 days, the shipyard turns fear into action and action into capability. There are risks in every corner, but there is more risk in standing still. The choice is clear because the time is short. Yorktown heads out to join the others. The crew will finish what they can at sea. Paint will dry under sun and spray. Bolts will be checked in a roll. The carrier will arrive at the square on the chart because people refuse to let a calendar decide the fight. The trap is set, barely, and it rests on welds that are still warm. Out beyond the reef, the Pacific waits with a hard face. The plan now depends on timing, on weather, on finding the enemy before the enemy finds them. The hands have bought days. What will the sky buy in return? Engines will answer throttles, and bows will knife into open swell. Radios will pass bearings in short, calm voices. Maps will fold and refold as courses adjust to wind and whispers. The gamble began with pencils and torches. It will be settled by pilots and lookouts over a wide ocean. For the first time in months, the timetable belongs to them. Operation MI runs May-June 1942. Its aim, strike Midway, draw out the American carriers, and finish the job. JN-25B traffic is the backbone of Japanese command and control. Station Hypo, led by Commander Joseph J. Rochette, chews on that traffic night and day. As CINPAC, Admiral Chester Nimitz listens, weighs, and moves the fleet when the evidence is good enough. The AF water ruse is the proof. Jasper Holmes suggests a plain, unencrypted report that Midway is short of fresh water. Japanese signals soon echo it. AF is short of water. That echo confirms the target, converts inference into a fix on place, and gives commanders a box on the chart to meet the enemy. Order of battle, concise. Japan fields 4 fleet carriers with roughly 230 carrier aircraft, plus escorts. The United States fields 3 fleet carriers and Midway-based planes, USMC F-2A and F-4F fighters, SPD dive bombers, TBF torpedo planes, and long-legged B-26s, B-17s, and PBY patrol aircraft. The material balance tilts to Japan, the information balance tilts the other way. Chronology over myth. At dawn on June 4th, Midway's search and picket forces send the first sighting reports. Torpedo squadrons attack in sequence, VT-8, VT-6, and VT-3. Their runs are made at low altitude and low speed, drawing the enemy combat air patrol down and outward. Losses are heavy. The effect on timing is real. Between 10:20 and 10:25, time stops meaning minutes. It means pressure, heat, and fuel. It means a hose writhing like a snake, a bomb cart rolling free, a hand on a valve wheel that will not turn. Down in hangars, fumes flash. Up on deck, men run with buckets because the line is cut, and then they don't run at all. Was it luck? The hole in the clouds, the lone destroyer, the exact minute the decks were full? Luck opens chances. but judgment makes them count. McCluskey read awake the way a welder reads heat color in steel. Best trusted his eye and struck for the heart. VB-3 found its line and finished the job they were given. And the low, slow crews who never reached a release point? Their work is here in the empty air above the carriers. Fighters that should be waiting high are down in the weeds, trading speed for blood. The sky is open for seconds because men at wave height held it open with their lives. Precision needs space. They bought it. Operational truth meets human cost on those decks. Refueling turns a carrier into a bomb with a runway. Rearming stacks pieces of a disaster next to each other and connects them with hose and habit. A single hit lights all the lines on the diagram at once. It is not a flaw. It is a risk of speed that both sides accept until one pays in fire. Smoke rises in straight black pillars, then bends with the wind. The sea reflects the flame like a mirror tired of being calm. Pilots pull out low, stomachs tight, engines rattling. In the cockpit, hands shake, then steady on the throttle. Some look back and see nothing but boiling black where decks used to be. On the enemy bridges, orders snap out, calm voices trimmed by shock. Turn into the wind, get the fighters up, flood the lines, jettison what you can. Every rule that keeps pace and order now fights a tide of heat. The plan that felt smooth an hour ago breaks along seams no one can see until they open. The minute that breaks the formation is a hinge. Preparation meeting timing, sacrifice opening space, judgment landing hard. By 10:25, decks burn and the ocean feels smaller, yet one carrier still has teeth. Planes roll, men on both sides brace. The question now is simple and brutal. Who answers first and at what cost? Headlines shout victory, decks whisper cost. 3 enemy carriers burn, but one still has teeth. Here to you strikes back. Her crews bend to the routine of launching while smoke scars the horizon. Bombers lift, fighters escort, and the attack claws across the water until the bombs walk down Yorktown's deck. The ship shudders, bulkheads ring like bells, paint blisters. A stack of small failures, sparks, and broken lines add up to a heavy wound. Power dips, then steadies under hands that know the ship by feel. On radios, voices stay low and clipped. Flood the port side, shift pumps, clear the flight deck. The hull takes the punishment and keeps a straight face as long as it can. Damage control is the quiet war within the war. Men crawl through smoke with axes and lanterns. Hoses buck and hiss. Casualty tags hang from collars made stiff with salt. Someone ties a rope around his waist and disappears into a space lit by one weak bulb. Someone else stands by a valve wheel and waits for the word to spin it open. Foam blooms, pressure falls, the list eases a degree. The carrier catches its breath, then takes another hit that knocks the breath out again. Still, hands keep working because that is what hands do when the sea tries to take a ship back. Patience, search, and a sliver of sky pay off. American dive bombers find Hiryu later and drop with clean angles. Bombs punch into the open places where fuel, planes, and people crowd the same few yards of deck. Fire climbs the rigging. Smoke pillars rise thin and then swell. On those boards, men run, slip, rise, and run again until the air itself turns hot enough to push them down. Flames make choices for everyone. Orders become simple. Save who you can, abandon what you must. The carrier that struck back burns, and with it the last hope for a quick rescue of the day. Days lengthen. The sea calms and then turns rough, as if unsure how the battle should end. Yorktown rides low but proud, while crews rig pumps and lines for a tow. Salvage parties move aboard with tools and hope. The work is steady, stubborn, almost tender. Patch, test, pump, repeat. Oil slicks widen around the hull, catching the sun like black glass. Then a gray shape finds its chance below. Submarine I-168 comes in close and fires. Torpedoes hit hard. The destroyer Hammond takes the blow and breaks. Yorktown heaves under the shock, men tumble, and water fills with debris, oil, and cries. Rafts and lines go over, whistles cut air, then fade. After that strike, the ship is a patient everyone loves and no one can save. Pumps keep singing, but the song grows thin. Bulkheads groan. Cold water slides in where hot water once steamed. Men in slick vests drift in groups, quiet now, eyes rimmed with oil. Boats circle and pull them in. On the carrier, the deck tilts a little more each hour. A simple truth writes itself across steel. The sea always wins eventually. When she finally rolls, there is no drama left. Only a long surrender and a white churn where a flat deck used to be. Ashore on Midway, noise replaces silence. Marines reload belts, patch holes in revetments, and haul more sandbags to the lines. Mechanics clean grit from gun breaches and set fresh barrels. The runway gets scraped and filled where bombs chewed it. Broken aircraft sit with panels off, parts lined like tools on a bench. Corpsmen restock stretchers and tape new red crosses where old paint peeled. Squads take turns sleeping in their gear. Every ear listens for the engines that would signal a landing, but it never comes. The island holds, and the men who hold it feel an odd mix of relief and unfinished anger. In ready rooms and mess lines across the fleet, something intangible returns. The idea that the enemy cannot be beaten loses its grip. People talk a little louder. They straighten a little taller. Ground crews hustle with a tempo that feels like music again. Letters home shift tone, from apology for what might come to a promise of what still can. Yet the cost sits in every empty chair, every bunk with a packed sea bag, every chalk mark wiped from a status board. Victory headlines race ahead on shore. Maps bloom with arrows. Numbers stack up to prove a point. But out where the wakes fade, work continues. Debriefs, inventories, updates to simple checklists, names added to short rolls. Strategic game lives in briefings. Daily grief lives in the small jobs done without complaint. Both are true at once. The win opens a door, the price stands in the doorway, and the questions wait. War promises a clean duel. Survival demands a clever one. At Midway, victory rests on both, and the weight of cunning sits heavy beside the cost of courage. That's the rub. Honor code versus survival code. Mercy versus mission. The win leans on deception. Radio lies bait an enemy ear. Broken codes turn noise into a map. A plain message about a water shortage goes out in the clear, not a mayday, but a crafted complaint. Hours later, a mirrored phrase appears in enemy traffic, and the trap feels real. Is that fair play, or a step too far? Those who bend the airwaves argue words cost less than shells. Others say a lie leaves a stain even if it saves a ship. The win also leans on sacrifice. Torpedo crews fly low and slow into visible fire to pull enemy fighters down. Many do not come back. Survivors count empty hooks where jackets hung. In letters home, sailors write through the pain in short lines. He was steady. He was brave. He should be here. Was it worth throwing men at a wall to hold fighters low? The answer depends on how you measure, on tactics, on lives saved later, or on the ache that never leaves. Cunning can look like cruelty up close, yet it can also be rough mercy, the hard choice that spares more people when the day is done. The trap at Midway saves islands, keeps convoys moving, shortens the long road back. But math doesn't comfort mother, wife, or friend staring at an empty chair. Numbers prove a point. Grief proves a price. Sailors and Marines live inside that tension. They honor rules because rules protect the weak. They break expectation because surprise protects many. In war, a ruse is an accepted tool, a betrayal is not. Fake distress to test a code sits in a gray place for some, a clear necessity